Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault 2, and we're back out here in the garage for another Garage Gun Talk. And in today's video, I wanted to talk about the recent events in New York City where the CEO of United Health was apparently the target of an assassination. And the story is very sensational, I think, from two perspectives. We have the personality, motivations, and politics side of it, but we also have the firearms side of it and what happened. And I think a lot of people are getting a lot of misinformation. They're looking at the video and they're thinking that, and I hate to say it, they're thinking that they're smarter than what they really are, just based off of maybe the little bit of knowledge they have about certain guns. And I think are spreading misinformation or saying the wrong things. And I always recommend to people to wait a few days for all of the information to come out, because once we actually get more information, you realize, that initial speculation was wrong. And that's what I think honestly happened in this story. So I brought out two different firearms, and these are kind of like analogs for the types of guns that some people are claiming were used in the commission of this heinous crime. So I wanted to show these off, talk about them and the differences between them, and tell you what I honestly think happened and what was used. And then at the very end of the video, we'll talk about the politics, the motivation, that kind of thing. I'm not a criminal psychologist. I'm not a criminal profiler, so that's not really my area of expertise. But actually, based off of what happened with the firearms, I actually think does give us a little bit of insight into the possible perpetrator or what about them and their knowledge of firearms that I think is important to take into consideration. But let's talk about the firearms first and what we saw, which, by the way, I should probably give a very quick caveat to this video in case you're finding my channel for the very first time, because inevitably, because of the topic of this video, you're probably like, who the heck is this guy? This is the Texas Gun Vault 2. This is my behind-the-scenes channel where I make very casual content using my cell phone versus my more polished videos that are edited and higher quality, where I do gun reviews, accessory reviews, and so forth. That's on my main channel. If you want to check out that channel and see all of my bona fides, there is a link in the description below. But this is just the casual channel where I can make these kind of off-the-cuff videos about politics, current events, initial impressions on guns, or things that are coming out in the future in the gun world, and that kind of thing. So that's what this channel is about, and we're going to be talking about, once again, about that targeted assassination today. So I wanted to talk about the guns and what I think happened and how I think people are getting wrong information out there, because I don't think they understand how firearms work, even people in the gun community. So let's talk about what we know. I'm not going to show any footage of the crime because I don't want to run afoul of YouTube's policies and guidelines and things, but I'm sure you guys have all seen the footage. So let's talk about it. Number one, the footage is very grainy and pixelated, which surprises me a lot because it's 2025, and you would think that by now we would have gotten rid of all those old digital cameras from like the late 1990s. I mean, come on, we live in a high definition world. I cannot believe that these companies have installed video cameras with such low quality. So we can only see like the silhouette of the firearm and basics, but we have to extrapolate what we think happened based off of other information. So let's talk about the guns and what happened, as I said. So the CEO of United Health, who's the victim in this, was walking in front of what I believe is the Hilton or a Hilton in Manhattan in New York City. And then in frame, the perpetrator, the assassin, walks up behind him, pulls out what is obviously a handgun with a suppressor attached. We don't know what model. We don't know what type of suppressor, whether it was a professionally made one or a homemade one. We have no idea. But what we see is the assassin point his firearm at the back of the victim. He fires at a range of about 7 to 10 yards. The victim falls down, and during that time, the assassin manipulates the gun in some way with his non-shooting hand, then fires again, manipulates the gun with his non-shooting hand, fires again, and then manipulates the gun with his non-shooting hand, and then leaves. And a lot of people are speculating a number of things. I'm hearing some people say he was using a rare variant of a gun, or a rare model of a gun called a Well Rod, which was a World War II Special Forces pistol that is very similar to this. Now, this is the B&T Station 6. Now, this is chambered in 9mm, and it's based off of the Well Rod design. The originals were in 32 ACP, and this is not a semi-automatic handgun. This is a bolt action or manually operated gun. And the original intent of the Well Rod was for, as I mentioned, targeted assassinations behind enemy lines during World War II with covert agents. And it is supposed to be as discreet and as quiet as possible. So we had a suppressor, which was a wiped suppressor. Now, this is a standard suppressor, a modern suppressor with like metal baffles. This model also comes with a wipe suppressor. Now, this is older technology, and you can actually see the end of the wipe here. And these are essentially like plastic discs that are throughout this suppressor. And once you use them, you can get about 7 to 10 shots before the suppressor begins to get kind of loud. But these are quieter for the first few shots than traditionally baffled suppressors like this one, but these are more durable, and you can fire many rounds through this and not lose suppression at all. But essentially, it's a manually operated gun, so the agent, the secret agent behind enemy lines would have his target. He would pull the gun out. It would already be loaded. He would essentially point it. He would fire it. The bolt does not reciprocate, so we don't have any noise coming from here. And as much of the sound is being suppressed by the suppressor as possible, and then he could escape. Now, if he had to do a follow-up shot, he will have some rounds in the magazine. There is a magazine in this. In the case of this gun, this uses a 9mm 1911 style magazine. And so what he would do, now, there are 2 ways of manipulating this gun. There's the right way and the wrong way, okay? I'm going to show you the right way first. Now, this is the way the agents during World War II would have been taught. So let's just say I fired the gun. Now I'm ready to load the next round. So the way that you're supposed to operate this gun, using your non-shooting hand, you would wrap your hand around the top of the gun, which this is the ejection port. It's not on the side, it's on the top. And you have your thumb here on the grip safety. And you would wrap it around the gun like this, which now with your shooting hand, you can manipulate the bolt, which is a knob on the back. You can turn that, pull that out, which will extract the round out of the chamber and eject it into your hand. And the reason you want to hold it like this is this round would come into your hand, and now you can take this, put it in your pocket, and you leave no evidence. That's part of the whole thing about the assassination. You're in quietly, you leave, nobody knows what happened. The wrong way of doing this would be to keep your hand on the pistol grip and manipulate the bolt with your left hand or your non-shooting hand and keep the gun up. And the reason this is bad is you could have problems with feeding, problems with ejecting, and because it might not come out of the ejection port, then when you try to load the next round, it's a whole nightmare and mess. But you'll just have so many issues, you'll have so many malfunctions, you'll spend more time clearing that, it becomes a problem. So I can kind of demonstrate this here. So I will go ahead and load a round here. So by the way, this is a snap cap. It's not a live round of ammunition. It's a dummy round. So I'll load the gun. And it's loaded now. So let's just say I'm a covert agent during World War II. And I find my Nazi target. I pull the trigger. Okay, now I need to shoot again. Grab it here, pull the bolt back. Now that round in my hand, put that in my pocket. I can now close the bolt and I'm ready to go again. The gun is ultra quiet. But now let me show you what happens if you use a well rod or a gun like this and you use it incorrectly. And what most likely will happen, and has been my experience with guns like this because of the nature of the ejector and the extractor. So if I open the bolt, and now I'm going to try to close the bolt and load that round. Okay, so that time it actually worked, But now let me try to extract the round. See, it didn't eject. It's now in the gun. So now if I have a round in the magazine plus that casing on the top, it's not going to load right. Now, sometimes when I load this gun, see if I can extract it there, it will essentially stovepipe when I'm trying to load it. I'm trying to see if I can duplicate that malfunction if you're using it wrong. Now, why am I showing you this and talking about this? Okay, so it's working well now, but often I will have issues with it. As I said, it will kind of stovepipe when it tries to load as the round comes out of the magazine. So why is that important? Well, based off of the footage that we saw of the assassination, the assassin kept his right hand on the pistol grip, manipulated the gun with his left. So that's not the typical way that you would run a well rod. And if you know anything about guns, you wouldn't run it that way. Plus, if you even had access to a well rod, you know something about guns. So that tells me he was probably not running a manually operated gun like this. The way he moved his wrist, the way the gun looks in profile, it does not look like a well rod. I know a lot of people were hoping and wishing it was because it's a cool design and it's the gun sensationalism of, oh my gosh, it's like the coolest gun. He's some type of like super secret assassin or something of that nature. And unfortunately, I don't think that's the case. The actual answer is much more mundane. So a lot of people thought it was a gun like this, but I do not think it was. What do I think it was? I believe it was a typical semi-automatic pistol with a silencer. Now, I don't know the model of either the silencer or the pistol, but for this analog, we have a CZ75B Omega and a rugged Obsidian 9 suppressor. Now, there are variations of semi-automatic pistols that kind of operate like this in that they can have a lock on the slide, and these are pretty rare, and most semi-automatic pistols can be modified to do this. It would lock the slide so when you fire the round, the slide will not reciprocate. It will keep the action closed so it's quieter, but those are rare. I have never handled one in person. I've only seen them online, and they're quite rare. They're quite rare because most people are not going to want that type of option on a handgun. So could he have been operating a gun like that? The answer is yes, but it is highly unlikely. So in order for him to have a gun like that, he would fire it, then he would have to take the lock off, manipulate the slide, close the lock again, fire again, take the lock. It would be too many moves for as fast as he did it. So I don't think that was the case. I definitely think he was using a typical semi-automatic handgun. Now, this is also where there's some speculation on either the suppressor or the ammunition, because a lot of people were saying, oh, his gun jammed. I don't think his gun jammed. Now, the reason for that is I believe he intended to manually manipulate the slide. Why couldn't it have been the suppressor's issue? Now, if you don't have the booster, otherwise known as the Nielsen device, which is there's a little spring here in the back of the suppressor that when the slide comes back, it actually kind of unlocks the suppressor as kind of free floating for just a little bit of time because this barrel has to tilt. But if you don't have that booster, it can still run. But if you know anything about firearms, you'd have that booster in there, and most pistol suppressors are going to have the booster already installed. So I don't think it was that. Some people were speculating it was some type of low resistance suppressor where all the gas was coming out the front and the gas wasn't cycling the action of the gun. I don't think that was the case either because semi-automatic pistols do not run on gas. Well, there are a few that do, like the HK P7, but a suppressor is only going to help that gun cycle because the more gas you have coming back into the gun because of the resistance of the suppressor, it's going to operate the gun better because you're going to have more force. But even if it was a low resistance suppressor, you're still going to have the same amount of gas coming back that you would if it was unsuppressed. But either way, when it comes to this type of gun, a basic semi-automatic pistol, you're using the laws of physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So when you fire the gun, the projectile comes out the barrel. You have the same amount of force that's coming back into the pistol the casing on the breech face, that's going to push the slide back and cycle the gun. So why didn't his gun cycle? I actually think it did. And this is why I said you have to wait to get all of the information. Because what did we come to discover from the crime scene? Well, they recovered 6 casings at the scene, all chambered in 9mm. 3 of them were spent, which meant they were fired, and 3 of them were not. And those 3 casings that were not fired had writing on them. I don't remember the exact terms. It was like deny, depose, and defer, I think it was. Some people are saying it has some motivation with the crime, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. But what I think happened was he intended to manually manipulate the pistol. It is my opinion that because those rounds had writing on them, he wanted to make sure they were left at the crime scene. Now, he could have just had them in his hand and dumped them, but that wouldn't have been as efficient. I think he wanted to make a statement, and not a statement to the victim, because the victim's dead. He wanted to make a statement to everybody else that would be at the crime scene and any other possible people, I guess, that work in the insurance industry or whatever. So what I think happened, he had a high-quality handgun and a high-quality suppressor that was running properly. And it was not the ammunition, by the way. Some people are saying, oh, he was running subsonic ammunition. To be quiet, subsonic ammunition will run in a semi-automatic pistol, no problem, even in 9mm. You load this with 147 grain, 9mm, it's going to run just fine. Just fine. I run subsonic 9mm all the time on suppressed guns. That's not going to be an issue. So unless he intentionally hand-loaded them way too light, which I don't think he's a hand-loader, he could be, possible, I think that what happened, in my personal opinion, based off of the information from the crime scene, he loaded his magazine with at least 6 rounds, and he staggered it. He intended the first round to be shot. He wanted the second round of the magazine to have one of the writings on it. Third round was intended to be shot. Fourth round had the writing on it. Fifth round was intended to be shot. 6th round had the writing on it. Because if the rounds were fired that had writing on it, they might not be discernible, or they might get lost as they get ejected from the gun. I think that what he did to make a statement, he pulled the gun, he fired. The gun cycled normally. It loaded that next round with the writing on it. He then pulled the slide back, which ejected that round from the chamber that was not fired. He let the slide go, loaded the next round he intended to fire, shot it. Then that gun cycled, loaded the next round with the writing on it. He manipulated the slide again, shot it, manipulated the slide again. So you had 3 spent casings and 3 casings that had writing on it. It was there to leave a message. And by doing that, it's really fast. So you can go boom, 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 and you're done. So it's not like having to manipulate the slide. If you're prepared to do that, is going to be a deterrent and waste time. Because if he had prepared for this and was knowledgeable about the operation of guns, he could have done it that fast. He would have known he was already cycling the action. Boom, 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 boom. That's it. Could have gone that fast. So that's what I think happened. So anybody that says it was a well rod, I am 100% sure it was not a manually operated well rod. And people that are saying his gun malfunctioned or jammed, I think are also wrong. I think it was intentional because of the rounds and the evidence that was left at the scene. I don't know what model pistol he was using or suppressor, but I think it ran fine. I think it did what it was supposed to do mechanically. But I think he decided to leave the casings that way. He just didn't want to dump them at the crime scene. Maybe he was worried about fingerprints or other evidence. That if they were in the gun, he cycled it. It would kind of clean him of any of that. I don't know. That's what I think he wanted to do. So that's what I think happened with the gun. I believe the gun was a typical semi-automatic pistol with a typical suppressor. The gun functioned correctly, and he manually manipulated the slide for the reasons of ejecting the rounds that had the writing on them. Okay, so that's the firearms part of the story. But now let's talk about the sensational part on, was the guy a professional hitman? Or was he just a disgruntled person that maybe got a claim denied, or a family member that had a claim denied? And that could be the case. Now, I am not, as I said, a criminal investigator. I'm not a criminal psychologist, nor am I a criminal profile. But I know enough about guns that I can speculate based off of what happened, what I think is the case. I can tell you that I am proficient with firearms. I shoot all the time. And I have to put myself in the mindset of that person. And if, let's just say, it was somebody that was denying the claim and you were just getting vengeance, it's emotional. Even if you know about guns, you're going to be nervous. This person appears to have been very calm and collected. They knew information regarding where the CEO would be and when he would be there. He arrived, he was calm, didn't react, didn't seem anxious, didn't seem nervous, didn't stand out. That tells me he was mentally prepared. Even though I'm proficient with guns, I could have made those shots. I would have been a nervous wreck if I was doing that. I mean, I'd be, looking around. As much as I wanted to be like, okay, stay calm, stay calm. We all know it. The guy was calm and collected. I think he was a professional. I think he knew too much about guns based off of the operation. So whoever it is knows about guns, okay? The way he operated the guns. I also think his shots were pretty good. At 7 to 10 yards, someone that is just emotional, anxious, you're going to miss the target. I know that seems like it's a short distance, because that's a typical distance that you would shoot at the range. But someone that is not familiar with guns, they're not going to get 3 shots off like that, having to manipulate the gun and the guy on the ground under pressure. No, he hit his target all 3 times. So I definitely think the person is proficient in guns, knows how to operate guns at a high level, and understands the mechanics very well. He's also a professional, someone that has been either in combat, or this is what I honestly believe. I believe the person has training to be an assassin. So I'm curious if we would ever find out if the person was trained by the CIA, for example. Maybe this person is an ex-military special forces, or maybe this person was a CIA assassin and worked with the government, and now he freelances as a hitman. In my opinion, it has all the hallmarks of a professional. Not only how he handled the gun and that he wasn't nervous, but also his getaway. We live in a surveillance state, especially in New York City. This person had to have known where the security cameras were. He knew he couldn't avoid them, and yes, he was covered up. But it amazes me how all of the other cameras in that area didn't catch anything. I think he had scouted the area. He knew where the cameras were. He knew where to stand. He knew what to do. He had his getaway planned. He had a bike ready, an e-bike ready to go. I believe it was too well planned for it to be an emotional, I'm just going to get this guy. It was not a crime of opportunity. He also had either inside knowledge of where the victim was going to be, or he had done his own research, like he had tailed them. He had some knowledge, as I said, either inside knowledge or the ability to do his own research, and knew where it was going to happen, when it was going to happen, how it was going to happen, how he was going to get away, how he was going to use the gun. I think this was a professional hit. In my personal opinion, I believe somebody that is extremely wealthy and very well connected had some reason. Now, it may be for some other reason besides insurance. It could have been a personal vendetta, but he had the hitman leave this stuff intentionally to throw off the trail. I don't know that. I really don't know the motivations, okay? I'm going to say I don't know the motivations, except for what the spit casing said, but that could be a decoy. All I'm going to tell you is that I believe the person that committed this atrocity, committed this crime, was a professional. He knew what he was doing. He was trained. He's done it before. That's my personal opinion. So that's my take on what happened in New York City. Second half of this video, complete speculation. And I'm curious if any of you that were in the military or in law enforcement or maybe even in special forces, I know I have people that were in special forces. What do you guys think? Do you agree with my assessment that the person was trained? My gut tells me he's an assassin for hire that's done this before. He's worked for the CIA or some other type of organization. I don't believe it's a criminal organization because this might sound a little bit racist, but he was white, apparently. From the footage you see, he looks white. He looks older. Typically, if you're dealing with crime, like cartels and things, I think you would see maybe a Hispanic person that was, a gun for hire. They'd be younger. They'd be a little bit more reckless. This person was calm, collected, and thoughtful. So, and also his race. I honestly think I think it was somebody that either has military training, CIA training, or government training for assassinations and covert operations. They're knowledgeable about firearms. So tell me if you agree with that assessment. And also tell me if you agree with the assessment about the guns that were used. And do you understand why I say it was not this as much as a lot of people wish it was, that it was something like this and it wasn't really a modified gun? And do you agree with my assessment on why he manipulated the gun, fired, boom, to eject the round with the words on it to leave the possible motivation or to leave the message, whether that be a decoy or to be a message to other people in the insurance industry? So there you go. That is my take on what happened in the targeted assassination of the CEO of United Health. So tell me in the comment section below, am I right? Am I wrong? Do you have anything to add? Or say, hey, I have some other knowledge that you don't have. Tell me in the comment section. And so if you watch to the end of this video, I like to give a word of the day because I know my videos can be kind of long and boring, but I always appreciate it when people watch to the end. So if you made it to the end of my video, the word of the day is going to be covert. Covert is the word of the day because we have a really cool covert style gun here. And whoever committed this crime, this heinous crime, I believe had covert knowledge, ability, and training. So there you go. So let me know in the comment section below. I look forward to hearing your dialogue with me, and let's have a great discussion. So, as always, thanks for joining me in the garage, and thanks for watching.